Despite the challenges NASA now faces following the Columbia disaster, the space program will continue. Our next guest knows something about overcoming obstacles. In 1983, he became the first African American to fly in space. We'll talk with him about his career and about the future of space exploration. Let's take note with Dr. Guy Bluford, who flew 4 shuttle missions and logged nearly 700 hours in space. Today, he is president of the Aerospace Technology Group, headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's good to be here.
You spent 15 years with NASA as one of its elite astronauts. I'm wondering if you can tell us where you were and what went through your mind on February 1st when the Columbia disaster struck.
Well, I was at home, and so I heard it on CNN News about 10 o'clock in the morning, and at first I didn't believe it. And then I had thoughts about the Challenger accident, because I remembered that, and I was in the astronaut office at the time when that occurred. So a lot of my thoughts went back to thinking about the Challenger accident and what happened there and the aftermath associated with it.
And in fact, you flew the last successful nighttime flight in the Challenger in 1985 before it blew up or disintegrated at liftoff.
Right. And also on top of that, I knew at least 4 of the crew members on that flight because they were my classmates. So I had a close bond with the people that we had lost in Challenger.
Did you know any of the astronauts in Columbia?
Unfortunately, I didn't. And I had been out of the program since '93, so all the astronauts on Columbia were new, so I didn't know any of them.
Former astronaut John Glenn, who, like you, was once a fighter pilot, he recently reflected on his own experiences after the Columbia disaster, and he said, yes, it could have been me. Did that thought run through your mind?
That thought ran through with me, too, and I can imagine, I remember hearing about what had happened, and I envisioned myself going through that same experience because I'd ridden home 4 times on the shuttle, and I remember how smooth that ride was. So I realized that how it seemingly a very benign entry really was a dangerous entry, and we just never really recognized it.
Astronauts know the inherent risks in space exploration, and in any exploration for that matter. Is liftoff and re-entry, is there a period where what-ifs start racing through an astronaut's mind?
I don't think so. I think when astronauts go out to fly the vehicle, they're very comfortable with flying the vehicle, and they're well prepared to handle any sort of the risks that they anticipate. And so when you go out to the vehicle, you are anxious to fly it, you want to do it successful, you anticipate that it will be successful, and yet you're well prepared to handle any sort of contingency that you think may occur.
Now, you flew after the Challenger disaster.
Right.
Were different thoughts going through your mind when you boarded Discovery?
No. To be truthful with you, I felt even more comfortable because I knew that the changes that NASA had gone through as part of the Challenger accident would make flying the shuttle even safer. So, and I also participated in the post-Challenger accident investigation, so I felt even more comfortable when I flew on STS-39. Despite
the comments that former Senator Glenn made, he said he still believes that the benefits of space flight are worth the risks. My guess is you feel exactly the same.
Oh, yeah, I feel exactly the same, and I think we owe it to those who've lost their lives to continue forward. We are still in the infancy phase with reference to exploring space, and there will be accidents and problems along the way, but I think we owe it to everybody to march forward and continue forward.
Speaking of continuing, the investigations into what caused the Columbia disaster are ongoing, although they continue to point to the foam insulation as the culprit, although NASA's top administrator said we will probably never know exactly what happened.
Well, I think we're pretty much narrowing it down to the leading edge tile on the left-hand side of the wing, and but what really caused it, we're really not sure, and I would agree with the administrator. We may not really find the root cause of it otherwise, but yet on the other hand, we're going to have to come up with some sort of change or modification on what we think the cause was.
John Glenn, and I keep going back to him because I read some interesting interviews that he did, but he was in New York several years ago, and he was joking about what it was like to be in space, and he said, how would you feel on top of 2 million parts built by the lowest bidder on a government contract? And it made me think, to what extent are the problems that we saw a result, and maybe they aren't at all, to the emphasis in building the space program, better, faster, cheaper?
Well, better, faster, cheaper, I think, was pushed by the previous administrator, Dan Golden, and his effort was pushed in that direction in order to make the agency much more efficient. And I think that there were some good aspects to that. But yet I think we've gotten a little further away from that because we realize that there are some risks associated with better, faster, cheaper. And but then I think on the other hand we've gained a great deal with reference to efficiency in trying to do that.
Right now, there are 3 astronauts orbiting in the International Space Station, which relies on the Space Shuttle system, not only to transport them there and back, but also to transport the necessary equipment. We're about halfway to building the International Space Station. With what's going on, where do you think NASA should go from here?
Well, I think NASA is running in the right direction. The 3 astronauts on board the International Space Station are safe. They do have a Russian vehicle that will bring them home, and the plan is to bring them home the either end of April or the first part of May on the Russian vehicle, and the Russians will provide crews to the International Space Station until we get ready to fly the shuttle again. So I think we do have transportation back and forth on the International Space Station. And right now, NASA needs to find out what the cause of the problem was on Columbia, get it fixed in order to get ready to fly again, and hopefully they'll be able to do that within the next year.
The International Space Station relies on the scientific and technological resources of 16 nations, including Russia. I'm wondering what impact, if any, you think the U.S.-led preemptive strike against Iraq may have on your continued relationship in space?
Well, I hope it doesn't have a negative effect. I'm pretty sure it has some effect, and there has been some discussions with the Russians, particularly with reference to Iraq. That impact has had a little effect with reference to recovering the astronauts on board the International Space Station and bringing some more up. But I think in the end, hopefully it won't have any effect at all, and the group of nations that are running the International Space Station will operate it regardless of what was going on outside of that.
What shuttle was going to retrieve the 3 astronauts now orbiting in the International Space Station?
I really don't know. I think it was probably Discovery, but I wasn't sure.
And at this point, that's grounded?
Right.
Okay.
All 3 of the shuttles are grounded until we find out what the problem was with Columbia.
What's the status of the other shuttles in the fleet in terms of age and how well they're holding up?
Well, all of them are about 20 years old, except for Endeavour, which was built after the Challenger disaster. So all of them are at least 15 or 20 years old. One of them is getting ready to go through a major overhaul, and NASA keeps them in pretty good shape. So they rely very heavily on them, and all 3 of them that are left are the ones that are qualified to attach to the International Space Station. So they're regularly maintained and well kept.
There are conceptual designs for what will one day replace the shuttle system. How far off is that? Is there soon to be an alternative to the fleet of shuttles?
I think it's going to be a while. NASA is looking at a replacement for the shuttle because the shuttle is getting older. The DoD, Department of Defense, is also looking for a similar sort of vehicle. They're starting to work together on putting something together, and I suspect it'll be another 10 years before we really see something that'll actually replace the shuttle. Matter of fact, we're looking at flying the shuttle all the way out to at least 2020.
What to your mind are the benefits of working cooperatively as opposed to competitively in space?
I think space has gotten so expensive now that we do have to work cooperatively, and that has proven to be a good thing. And then also the International Space Station is forcing us all to work together. And it's very interesting to go down to the astronaut office and see astronauts from around the world, from Japanese and Canadians and Americans and cosmonauts all working together on this one goal, which is to fly the shuttle and to build the International Space Station.
Speaking of goals, What is the ultimate goal? Is it to explore Mars? What do you see as the ultimate goal of all of this?
I think the ultimate goal is to step out beyond our Earth's atmosphere, our Earth planet environment, and go beyond. It could be Mars. It could be beyond that. I think humans are explorers, and we will always continue to expand out beyond the universe as much as we can.
What do you say, Dr. Bluford, to the critics, and they seem to come out of the woodwork in the form of op-ed pieces that I read in almost every publication following the Columbia disaster, saying things like space exploration is too costly in terms of human life, economic terms. How do you respond to that?
No, I totally disagree with them. There will always be risk for explorers, and if you're going to continue to make progress, you're going to always have some risk associated with it. But the benefits associated with learning more about the universe, learning more about Earth, about flying in space are well worth the risk associated with it.
Now, you are known above all as the first African American to fly in space. What does that achievement mean to you?
I'm very proud to be part of that, but I think I'm proud of just being part of the astronaut program. I came in '78 with two other African Americans, Fred Gregory and Ron McNair, and I think we were all trailblazers with reference to African Americans flying in space, and I hope that our role, my role model, their role models were sufficient to encourage more African Americans to join the space program.
Now, John Glenn, I believe he was in his 70s when he went back into space some years back, and he's proud to say even at 81 or 2 that he could still pass the physical fitness test. Would you, if given an opportunity today, would you return to space?
I think I would. I think I would. It's a great adventure, a great opportunity. I could understand I realize how much John Glenn enjoyed his experience, particularly since he was trapped in this little bitty capsule on the first time he flew. So the advances that we've made ever since, and his opportunity to fly in shuttle, I'm pretty sure he enjoyed very much.
With just a couple of seconds remaining, you mentioned that the accommodations are a lot better today than they were before. What is it like? Is it a claustrophobic atmosphere in the shuttle?
No, it's not a claustrophobic atmosphere. It really is a very comfortable atmosphere. And surprisingly enough, people think that you're closed in, but yet you have a lot of space because all the space above your head, you use. So you really have a lot more space. But the view out the window is spectacular, and the zero-G is enjoyable, so it really is just a thrill.
Is that view of you will never forget?
Oh, yeah. I would agree with that. And I still remember, there are views that I remember looking out the window that really stood out for me, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
I've been talking with Dr. Guy Bluford, who was the first African American to fly in space. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.